Okay. Welcome to Mentoring for Career. My name's Anne Rolfe, and I'm the founder of Mentoring Works. So I wanted to start out by saying...
I couldn't find Braiding Thorns by...
Oh, okay, I've just got someone else joining us, and I need to mute everybody so we don't get too much background noise. There we go. So just by way of a bit of an explanation, of course, the focus is on mentoring, but in these webinars this year, our focus will be on mentoring for career conversations. And this really goes back to the beginning of my career. I am, as I mentioned, a trained career counsellor, and I came to mentoring by way of career development. I used to run workshops on career development, career planning, and I talked about mentoring as one of the ways to develop your career. And that's what led me when clients sort of started saying, well, can you run some workshops on mentoring for us? So I did the research and started, and it just took off from there. But these days, what we know is that career development is the #1 reason people seek mentors. So I thought it's best if I share what I also know about career development with those of you out there who are mentors, who train mentors, giving you some background in career development and really focusing the skills of mentoring in this particular area. So if you are having people come to you to talk about career and wanting to have conversations about career, you're in the right place, because I've got 10 webinars coming up, all based on that book, the Mentors Toolkit. So over the next, this session and the next 9 sessions this year, I'm going to be talking about, in the first instance, the changing career scene. So start thinking, I'll be looking for your input. What changes have you seen over the lifespan of your career? And how has that impacted on the sorts of conversations people will want to have with you about their careers? I'll talk about career phases, so some of the typical things that you'll see as people go through different life stages and phases. And because it's a huge issue for us, albeit it's changed dramatically, I will be talking about work-life balance. In fact, I've got a whole webinar dedicated to that next month. So then we're going to get into the career, the mentoring conversation. And as a prelude to that, I'll be talking about, there'll be a webinar on how to create a safe space for these conversations where people can feel comfortable and safe in your presence to, reveal because you're going to be talking to them about perhaps their dreams, their aspirations, their goals, their shortcomings even. So how to create that environment for them, whether it's in person or over the air, for them to open up and speak freely with you. I'll talk about the framework for the mentoring conversation, and I'll also be focusing on how do you develop people's talents and strengths. So that's also an important part. Then we'll go deeper into those mentoring conversations and in specifically career conversations. I'll be talking individually about those 4 questions. Those of you who have been on my webinar, read my books before, will be familiar with these 4 questions. They're the fundamental core questions of a mentoring conversation. But I'll take each one separately and actually focus on it specifically when it's used in that context of career, and be giving you some of the ideas around that kind of conversation and some of the activities you might be wanting to do and some of the areas you might be wanting to look at with your mentees. And then in the final in the final webinars, what I'll be looking at is some tips and some tools, some of the questions that have come up over the previous webinars. I'll be giving you lots of sample questions, and with the book actually comes these 50 activities to do for your mentees to do that will help that career planning process. And also when you buy the book, you get access to what's called the Mentors Toolkit, which is a series of short videos that go over the material that's also in the book that you can actually allow your mentees to look at. So we'll be covering this material over the next 9 webinars as well as this one today. So let's get on with today's webinar. What we're going to be covering today as we start this process of, okay, our focus for mentoring is career and career conversations. So today, I'm going to be putting some context around your mentoring. In the book, I focus on the context of career, but in this webinar, I'm actually focusing on context in terms of your role as a mentor, why they seek you, what they're looking for, what you can offer them. Then some talk about the changes, and I want your input. What are the significant changes you've seen over your career? And I'll share what my research has shown and what my experience has highlighted, and then talking about these different career phases. Some of them are age related, but also they can happen these days. Age is just a number, as they keep telling us, but the different sorts of phases and the sort of issues they may bring up for the people that you are working with. So let's start with some context. And so thinking about why mentors seek you, and do feel free to add your own comments and share your own observations with your colleagues on the line at the moment. We've got 35 people on the line from right around the world, so please do share and make it a rich and valuable experience for everyone. So mentors are often sought by people wanting career advice, and they may ask you because they see you as a role model. You have experience and perhaps you've advanced your career. Maybe you're in a position that they actually aspire to, and you do have lots of valuable information to share. And they may come to you with lots of questions, perhaps about how they can move into a new role or how to move up, perhaps how to move into a leadership role, how to reinvigorate their career. I'll talk later on about career plateaus or people perhaps returning to the workforce after a break. And I find more and more people have been wanting to talk about this whole work-life balance issue. So thinking about your role as a mentor, what they're looking for, and in fact, one of the dictionary definitions of mentoring is a wise guide. And if you're prepared to mentor, you need to be able to do more than answer specific questions that they might ask. You need to lead a process that enables them to discover options and make informed choices. And you're going to hear me say that word a lot. It's a theme of mine. So you're going to help them discover their options and make informed choices about their future. Before you can give advice that will be really of value, you need to understand what they really need and what their personal priorities are. So you can actually help them plan how to develop. So what I mean by that is build their capabilities, so build their skills. Think about what skills they need and how they can actually develop them. You can also help them develop in terms of finding ways to be better at what they do and enjoy their work more and have a more satisfying career. So that's that whole development thing. As I mentioned, they might want to move. So again, it might be about gaining knowledge, skills, and perhaps experience to advance or to get a better or a different job. Or they might want to change, or they might come to you not significantly with change in mind, but as your conversations unfold, they might have that insight. They might have that aha, you know what? maybe I want to change completely and do something completely different for a living. And that's a big responsibility, because the mentee must make important decisions, not just about their livelihood, but indeed about their lives and how they want to live them. So I guess what I'm saying is your job is to help them make informed decisions for themselves. And that decision might not be what you or I might choose for ourselves. And so we've got to understand that's our responsibility. That's not to say we can't give advice or we don't give advice. We give our opinions, certainly, and we give input. But bottom line is, it's their life, it's their livelihood, they're adults that we're dealing with. And I'm making that assumption that we're dealing with adults when we're talking about career. But they have to make an informed decision. So I'll talk more about how they become informed a little bit later on. The thing is that going deeper into their questions, using various activities, and the activities that I've included in the book are the activities I would give people over a 3-day workshop in career development, so that the tools are all there. By helping them go deeper, it's a journey of discovery for them, and they'll clarify what they're really looking for from a career and how it fits with the way they want to live life and what they can realistically aspire to. And the other aspect of this approach to mentoring is you need to understand the fundamentals about career and share those with them, and that'll increase the effectiveness of your mentoring. You'll give better advice, they'll make better decisions, and both the process and the outcomes will be more satisfying for each of you. So I hope this is giving you some context about your role as a mentor and what you can offer a mentee. So in short, what you can offer them is a sounding board for their ideas. And this is, when I've talked to mentees, this is one of the common phrases they use to describe a good mentor is a sounding board for their ideas. They bring their ideas and bounce them off you. You can certainly give them new perspectives, possibilities, and the benefit of your lived experience. You can offer that to them. You can help them clarify their aspirations, their needs, their values, and their own priorities. You can help them gain by the questions you ask, and if you give them assignments or activities or point them off in directions to go research things, they'll gain greater self-awareness and self-confidence as a result. The process of mentoring helps people become more creative and hones their critical thinking skills. What you're doing too is an aid to decision making, their decision. They're the one who's going to make the decisions, but you help them identify criteria by which to make their decisions. You will also help them learn risk assessment processes. And I know those of you, and there's lots involved in project management, you're all over risk management and risk assessment. But this brings it into, in a modified way, of course, into the career conversation. So people just don't go off willy-nilly jumping into particular directions. They've got ways and means of working out what's the risk involved if I do this? How risky is that? Is that a risk I'm willing to take, or do I need a safer solution or path or course? You can give them input, you can give them the value of your experience, and you can share your opinions for them to take into consideration as they're making those informed decisions. And hopefully you're inspiring them, giving them hope for the future. And you certainly want to bring all of your positivity. There's enough doom and gloom out there, but we've got enough, especially if someone's in a mentoring relationship. we have enough optimism, we have enough experience from life and from work under our belt to know that, that there are always opportunities in the future, and possibly ways to find those opportunities. Okay, enough from me. I'd love some input from you in terms of your thoughts on this, your ideas as well. So if you want to actually share those, please go ahead and type those into the question in the chat box there. I'm just looking. Okay, hi Lodi from the Philippines. Lovely to see you here. Great to see so many of you on board. Okay, so a bit of a heads up here, because I'm going to ask you for specific input here. What are some of the changing ideas that you have witnessed over your lifespan in career? I'm thinking in terms of when we reflect on career, or when we advise people on career moves and what to do, what are some of the things that you might have been told when you were starting out, or you might have told people a few years ago, that have actually changed now? So you give different advice now in this day and age than you might have 5, 10 or more years ago. So some of the things I'm thinking about is, like, we know jobs become extinct. Job titles that existed when I started don't exist now. Equipment that people would have operated when I started out, telex machines and things like that, even typewriters, doesn't exist now. And so jobs become extinct, but then new ones emerge. Even the term job position is a bit old-fashioned these days. We tend to talk more about roles. We have role descriptions rather than job descriptions quite often. So that's one change. And people seldom stay in one occupation, let alone in one job or with one employer these days throughout their life. There's going to be change. They're going to move. And also, once upon a time, it was pretty safe to invest in, tertiary education, for example, that got you a qualification that aligned with a job at the end of that. But these days, some jobs might be in strong demand when you enrolled for your university course, but less so by the time you finish. A degree or any sort of training really is not necessarily going to guarantee you a job at the end of it. And in fact, there's a flip side to that. That brings lots of opportunities. Graduates are in demand outside of some speciality that they might have taken. So so we need to be aware from a mentoring point of view that what was once true or true for us is not necessarily factual for people. And I'm going to put up a sort of before and after, old and new, in a moment, but just let me have a look and see. We've got some input here. Just going to go through. Okay, so Rhonda's saying, any training is good and skills can be transferable. Keep learning new things. Yes. And that old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, is absolutely not true. We need to get rid of that mindset. I live in an over 55 lifestyle village, and my neighbour is a 72-year-old writer who is all over technology. She self-publishes. She's right into it, and she's a whiz kid in a 72-year-old body. So it is very much keep learning. Kerry's saying it used to be almost impossible to aim for part-time, flexible, very senior roles. Now it's much more possible. Yes. Okay. Leanne's saying geographical location of jobs as a limit is no longer a limitation. Many organisations have embraced work from home and flexible working arrangement during these COVID times. Absolutely. Trevor saying years ago it would have been build up within the company to progress skills. Now it's be prepared to move and move for your own reasons, whether ethics, progression, new skills, better company. Okay. And Katie's saying a university is not always necessary. Do you know, I'll tell you a secret here. I taught in a university on the subject of adult learning to adult learners without a degree, which you might say, how could you do that? Well, it was as a matter of my background and experience, they hired me to do that. And it was before the formalization of recognition of prior learning. It was recognition of my prior learning before that became a thing. Okay. Chris has a question. How do we get mentees to be one step ahead when graduating from uni or wanting a new direction in their lives? I think that's a great question. I'm going to come back to that, Chris. So remind me towards the end. And if other people have got ideas on that, please share your views. Chris, do remind me to come back to that one. I just want to focus on the changes right now. But you're right, just asking the question, because you do have to encourage your mentees to really be thinking broad rather than narrow. And that idea that someone mentioned before about transferable skills, we're seeing a lot of creativity coming when people from one area actually take that knowledge into another. I can't remember what company it was. I used to use it as an example, but it was a company with an engineering focus. Their CEO was actually from a background in pharmacy, and that was working very well. I mean, pharmacy obviously wasn't his only experience, but there we go. Victor's saying, okay, we used to receive the advice to be hardworking, but now the new advice is working smart, meaning being strategic. Yep. Before there was only managerial tracks, now there's also individual contributor options. Okay, agreeing. Okay. Katie's saying work-life balance was not even an option. We were told get good grades, go to uni, get a job, then work even harder to get ahead. Keep the job, don't move around. Okay, cool. So I just want to highlight some of the old and new thinking here. I'm not going to spend a lot on it. I'll leave it up on screen as we go through, but I'll focus on some of these old ideas that may or may not come as a surprise to you. You know, it used to be if you were hiring people and they jumped around and that was on the resume, that looked really bad. But now, and I'll show you the actual government figures on job tenure shortly, but as long as there's an explanation for those movement, and younger people are extremely mobile, as long as you can show that there was learning involved and, you know, good reason for the moves, those gaps in your resume will not necessarily go against you. And a new thing, you know, travel, caring for a family member, even volunteering, you know, people take kind of like a gap year or a sabbatical and go and, you know, save turtles or something, as my daughter did in South America. That can be seen as a worthwhile thing to do and on your resume. Now, here's one that it can be a bit iffy. The traditional wisdom was you don't tell your boss when you're looking around for another job. But that's less risky, and it might even be helpful to you. If you've got a really good manager or leader, they might be able to point you in a direction within the organization where you can get what you want or not, but they may be on side, but you need to be just a little bit sensible about that. Another thing, companies, once you left, there's no going back, but now there's a lot of organizations that see real value in taking their employees back after they've gained experience elsewhere. The wisdom used to be always be on the lookout for another job. Now it's always be looking for ways to learn and grow and get more satisfaction in your work and enjoy what you do. This is what someone mentioned before. It's not just about moving up. It's not just about going into management. Sometimes that takes you away from the very thing you love about your job anyway. Okay, so let me just have a look and see if we've got some other examples coming up. Okay, and saying being open and honest regarding any disabilities the person might have. Yep, okay, cool. Okay, so here's a question for you too. If you were hiring someone today, because with all this change, it means recruiters are actually looking for different skills. And it does change from year to year, what's on the top 10 list. But what do you think some of your top 10 skills might be? And I'm not going to sort of say right or wrong here, and that it'll be different for your particular occupation that you're hiring for. But what I will share with you is what Forbes, the Human Resource Council expert panel, said late last year. Okay, yeah, project management I'm seeing coming up, programming skills, okay, and some of those would be agility, yeah, okay, and in general, that's the one that's hitting the mark. Do you know the growth mindset came up as their number one? That idea that we are all learning and growing and going to have to continue to learn and grow. This idea of continuous, and the mindset, the growth mindset refers to having in mind that how we are born is not necessarily how we are for life. We all can get new skills and we all can get better in the things that we do. So it is a process. Okay. Yep, critical thinking. Maria, how about that? You got it just as I was about to bring it up. So that idea of logic and reason and critiquing, not criticizing, but that actual critical. They've said survival skills, overcoming challenges. We might say resilience, perhaps. And there it comes up. Curiosity. So being interested. Flexibility goes back to agility, someone said. Dedication. So recruiters actually are looking for people who will dedicate themselves to their profession, their organization. And of course, you can't dedicate yourself to something unless the values are in alignment and the ethics, as someone said. A coaching mindset. Now, I'm sure most of you, I know there's some managers and leaders on the line today, and coaching and mentoring is actually written into the role description. So, and along with that, and that's an aspect of creativity too, is being comfortable with ambiguity. That is, we understand that things aren't black or white. There's many shades in between, and we can have on the one hand something, on the other hand something else, but it's and not or. They're not mutually exclusive. They might be different and ambiguous, but they're not, it's not as simple as yes, no. And number 10 on the list is thriving in a virtual environment. It's here to stay. All of the research says we're going to be living in this virtual environment, even though there are people who want to go back to the office and hated working from home. There are people that loved working from home and never want to see the office again. That's probably not going to happen. It's going to be some sort of hybrid for most people. But that means we've got to keep up with Zoom and all those online things and find ways to make all that stuff work and get comfortable with the technology and not only survive but thrive in that area. Okay, just seeing. Okay, Katie's saying working in cafe during my working day is so productive. Yeah, some people need that sound and atmosphere bubbling around them. Other people hate it. Okay, Brenda's saying can be big picture and enabled to be detailed. So there's that ambiguity. You've got to be able to see the big picture, but not lose the detail and not pay attention to the detail. So it's and, not or. Okay, so just looking at your questions, comments. Now, you can't really expect to be across all of the many changes that are happening in this whole world of work. I mean, you've got day jobs, don't you? You're not just a career counsellor. I don't think we've got any dedicated career counsellors or coaches on the line. This is just part and parcel of what you do. So you can't be an expert in all these things, and you don't need to be. But what you do need to do is find ways to get on top of the major trends and the major themes. So here's how I do that. I read things like Forbes magazine. So you can get X number of free articles from Forbes, Harvard Business Review. Your national or local newspapers will often have a column, a Q&A type column, so you can see the trends there. So you will find it quite useful to tap into those sorts of things. It doesn't have to take a lot of your time. You know, if you're using Facebook, if you follow Harvard Business Review or something, you'll get articles. Some will be relevant to career, some will be relevant to other things that will be interesting for you as well. But I've always, I don't subscribe anymore because I'm semi-retired, but I do look for those articles in my research. They're really good. So the whole thing is, though, that you want to be, you know, have an overview of the trends, and you want to encourage your mentees to go out and do the research. And this is the point I want to really emphasize. Your mentoring conversation should be just that, a conversation. An amount of time that you set aside, it should be enjoyable and fairly easy for you to do, because you get the mentees to do the work. You can point them in the direction, but essentially you send them away with things to do and come back and then have the conversation. They should be the one gathering the details, you know, Googling and finding out information. There's tons of information there. They should gather it. They should then bring that back to you and discuss options with you. Together, you critique the information. That is, not criticize it, but critique it. You know, what is useful, what is practical, what is relevant and meaningful for them. Just keep in mind that idea. Your job is to support them in making informed decisions that are right for them. They're the ones who do the work. Now, I want to talk to you about some of the common career constraints that people will have, because we know it's not all smooth sailing these days. And I've actually put together a handout for you. I'm going to see if I can put that in the, can I put that in the, let's see, can I put that in the, it is in the chat. If you can scroll back in the chat, I've actually got a handout for you on this, because the slide is going to be too busy and we're going to run out of time to go through it in detail. But, and I'd like your input too. What other common career constraints do people bring to you? So what are the limitations? What are the barriers? What are the obstacles that get in the way of people pursuing the sort of career options they might want to? So the first one, job market constraints. You know, there's only so many occupations. Okay, and Sujatha, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, is talking about visa issues. Katie's saying not thinking they have the skills. Yeah, so there might be job market constraints, though those are less at the moment. There are more opportunities at the moment. Lack education, training, qualification. They might have low self-confidence. There could be non-negotiable commitments. For example, if they're part of a couple where both partners have, you know, full-on careers, that's going to place some constraints on their choices. They might be co-parenting. They might have an elderly person that they are responsible for. We all have financial limitations. They might have student loans to pay off, a mortgage. They could have credit card debt. Now, these are issues that, if these are problems for them, you're going to have to point them towards specialists in this field. These are not issues that you're necessarily qualified to get into. They might have poor social skills, you know. So are there other things? Okay, care or responsibilities, qualifications that don't match or are valid globally, getting a sponsor. Okay, so some good ideas there. So here's the slide. As I said, it's too busy to go through too much detail there, but I do have it as a handout. I'm not quite seeing how I can put that up again for you in the chat. As I said, Zoom's changed some things since I've had a break, but it will be on the website later on when the recording for this webinar goes up. So if you're watching the recording, it'll be down below for you to download and look at. So there's the list we've just gone through on the left-hand side. Now, what I've listed under considerations are the sorts of questions you need to explore with them. So I'll just go through the first one, job market constraints. Is it a perception or fact? You know, sometimes we can get completely the wrong idea. We might think there are job market constraints, but do we know that for a fact? Have we actually gone out, done the research? You know, or is, you know, I've said before, if you've been on my webinars, people come to you with a presenting problem. So on the surface, that's what they want to know about, but usually there's something underlying, and there could be a combination of these factors here. So, you know, how flexible are they? Could they relocate for opportunities? We might have a job market constraint in one country, but would they be willing to relocate to another area? Are they defining their goals too narrowly in the first place? One of the things we'll do as a mentor perhaps is broaden their goals and their aspirations. The other one I want to just briefly talk about here is this one of low self-confidence. And forgive me, I've got a bit of a soapbox here, but I won't take long. The reason I've got a soapbox is I've been involved and I've seen too many mentoring programs for women or for minorities that have as their broad aim build the self-confidence of the participants. And I'm here to tell you, many times when it's a mentoring program aimed at that, confidence is a tiny bit of it, but really there might be structural issues in the organisation or the profession or the occupation that are working against those women and minorities. And all the confidence in the world is not actually going to make a difference to that. We need to, you know, bite the bullet and tackle the real issues in organisations. You're not going to fix it with mentoring. So you need to be aware of that. So they may need other strategies. Okay, I'll just see if there's any questions or comments on any of these before I move on. Oh, thank you to the person who uploaded that for me. I don't know why I can't see a way to, well, there it is, probably there. No, okay, I don't know what's going on. We'll sort it out. All right, now we've mentioned working from home, and I said some people love it, some people hate it, but from a mentoring and indeed from a leadership management point of view, you need to be aware that not everybody thinks the same way. We know that since the pandemic, work is not 9 to 5, if it ever was, or office centric. And working from home at least some of the time, some of the week, has become widely accepted. And for some people, it might help their work-life balance, but it's questionable. You know, if anyone's been working from home with kids, trying to homeschool them, or, you know, had a partner who's also working from home, you know, there's so many implications of working from home that the whole work-life balance thing has kind of been turned on its head, and there are new issues around achieving balance in your life that perhaps weren't there before, when we had a distinction between this is home and this is work. So it's questionable about whether that has helped. So we can't assume that it's improved. There's no off switch for people who are working from home. You know, at least when you walked out of the office, unless you were taking a briefcase or the laptop home, which I know many people did, but technically it was left behind. Working from home can lead to all sorts of relationship stress. Who gets the computer? Who gets the kitchen table? Who gets the spare room? Who gets to do the parenting or the homeschooling stuff? So it can add to your relationship. It can add to the mental load and people's mental well-being. Our environment may not be set up ergonomically, comfortably for working from home. Digital communications, we haven't got that face-to-face opportunity so much. We're relying on, and how easy it is in a text or an email to not get the context because you can't see the person. And then the technology itself sometimes lets us down. Our broadband situation in Australia is horrible. And, we've got to contend with all of that. And yet, despite all of that, the research says that 85% of Australian knowledge workers say they are as productive or more productive working from home. I don't know if that's the 85% who don't have kids or have a good setup or not. I really wouldn't know. But we need to acknowledge as mentors that there's an impact on career as a result of this working from home. Workers are more isolated. They have less informal mentoring. They have reduced exposure, so they're not seen around the place. Their profile is sort of lower. They have no informal chats, the chat that happened in the lunchroom, around the water cooler, even in the washroom, those chance meetings in the corridor for an informal chat or as you're passing someone. That doesn't happen anymore. And some of those informal chats frequently can help develop relationships, steer off problems and open opportunities. So they may, in fact, miss out on information and opportunities that they might pick up were they in the office all the time. So, so it's important to recognise that. And what that does is make mentoring even more important, because starting even a casual or informal mentoring relationship allows people to develop rapport and reach out and find common ground. Making contact and strengthening those connections with others helps overcome that isolation that can, set in when you're working from home. Or indeed, when we're in an environment where we've got to maintain that social distance or wear our masks, which is isolating even if you're there in real life. If you're wearing a mask and it's social distancing, it kind of isn't conducive to necessarily those close relationships. So having a mentoring relationship becomes even more important. You can help them overcome the obstacles to career development that working from home might bring, and your conversations can help keep them focused and proactive in managing their career and perhaps track down opportunities they might otherwise miss. Now, it's important that they stay proactive and focused on their career, because one of the tenets of advancing your career or developing your career is you have to perform well in what you're doing now. So people who don't have career aspirations or don't care about their longevity in the world of work, they're the ones who are going to be underperforming. So it actually can help. And this is one of the reasons that leaders have that mentoring and coaching in their role description. Now, I promised you this before. This is research from the Australian Government Department of Employment that actually shows average job tenure. So this is government research. So there you are. The under 25s are the most mobile. Over 25 to 35, 2 to 3 years. The older you are, the longer the tenure tends to be. But overall, the average job tenure is 3 years and 4 months. I don't know, you might tell me if that is in fact a surprise to you, just looking at the messages coming in. Okay. Okay. So Alfred is saying, I meet with my mentees once a month for lunch. That's great, because that's a really good social situation. It allows you to foster that relationship in a probably a fairly comfortable way. Okay. Katie's saying starting a job virtually is definitely more challenging. And, you know, a lot of people over the last 2 years have had to do that. Al's saying everyone goes to McDonald's when Comcast takes a hit. So yeah, and I think Katie was saying before, you know, working in the cafe, sometimes you get better reception and what have you in a cafe or a place like that. What you do have to be careful about that, though, and we'll talk about it next when we get to safe spaces, is can you have the privacy and the confidentiality in a public space like that? Okay, cool. All right. What you can see from this, and I don't know if this came as a surprise to you or not, you might let me know. Today's school leaver is likely to have 17 different employers and move through at least 5 distinct career changes instead of that job for life scenario, you know, my parents envisaged. That's a lot of change. And finding satisfying and meaningful work means exploring options in lifelong learning. Okay, let's move into our final phase of this webinar, which is career phases. So just looking to see if there's any more questions, comments. Good advice from Katie here. She says, my motto now is if you're not happy at work, you won't be happy at home. So change your job because it will change your life for the better. And Al's saying Starbucks is packed. Okay, cool. Okay, 4 jobs in a year, and I'm so happy for it. And what this brings home too, which we'll talk about in later sessions during the year, is the necessity to really do your homework and use all avenues at your means to find out the reality of any organization you're thinking of moving to, any occupation or any role that you're thinking of taking on. And we'll talk about, you know, some of the strategies that you can do to find out more than what the glossy ads or the mission statement or the annual report will tell you about an organization. So here are some of the typical phases. You know, now we've talked about traditional and the changes and so forth, but we thought of early career as relating to learning, gathering our expertise and experience, and maybe advancing before maybe we peaked, perhaps a plateau. Today, we're continually learning and developing new skills, changing roles, and even completely reinventing ourselves. So the career path, it's not this smooth upward curve. It can be highs and lows and changes as we retool and relearn. Now we can go off in all sorts of directions. And we have to understand some people are more driven than others to seek promotion. Career advancement to some people still does mean moving up, advancing, getting promotions, moving into leadership and management. However, with flatter organisations, better educated employees and competition, there are fewer opportunities for promotion. Not everyone wanting to move up is suited to it. I'm sure some of you have had that experience of mentoring someone who had, you know, high aspirations, but didn't really seem like they had the wherewithal to back the ambition. So it's important for them to get a realistic view of the requirement and their capabilities. Some people are after status and money, and I'm fine with that. We're all different. Those things are important, and they may come with that promotion, but they may not have thought about the downside of a promotion, you know, taking them away from work they might love. Not everyone's suited to leading or managing people, and that's going to be perhaps a big part of their role. So they might get lumbered with a whole heap of administration tasks that they never had to do before. So we need to help people expand their horizons, so look more widely at things. We need to help them build mobility, agility, resilience, so they can make those changes. They don't feel like they're trapped in something. They don't feel like the only option to get more money or to get more satisfaction is to move up. We want to help them explore those options and opportunities, and select what's most satisfying to them. Now, there are particular pressure points. We'll give you some feedback on these. I may not have got them all, but we used to talk about midlife crisis. Remember that? But it's become clear there are various ages and stages as people go through life, where people take stock and reconsider the track they're on and their life and career. It doesn't have to be a crisis, but it may be time for a change. For some people, it's their early 30s and they hear the biological clock ticking. They see their friends getting married, starting families, or they simply question if where they are in life and in career is where they thought they'd be and where they want to be. So it's just a bit of a pressure point. A typical one is parents returning to work after a break. And I realize I'm being very, heterosexual, family oriented, and there are lots of other people who don't have these particular issues, and they have other issues as well. But I'm just trying to paint a broad brush here so that we do at least become aware of some of the things that are on people's mind. And I'd like to break down some of the stereotypes or ideas that we might have in our head. Parents returning to work after a break to care for their children really can struggle with unreasonable expectations. Some they put on themselves, some from other people, and lack of support. They might take the part-time job or job share roles for the reduced work hours. Now, for some people that works out great, and for some organisations that are quite enlightened and they have career opportunities for people who are working part-time and job share, that's fine. But there are still a lot of companies out there, a lot of organisations where part-time work is death to your career, or certainly massive obstacle. So part-time work, reduced hours can be a useful strategy, or it can be a career setback because you're often overlooked for promotion. Managers may hold false assumptions about people who work part-time and think that they're not necessarily as capable or as committed, and hold that against them. And then we've got co-workers may resent the special treatment that parents get and that flexibility. So some people will actually leave to start their own business to get that family-friendly solution. Then we've got, so that's often early 30s, then we've got kind of mid-40s to 50s. Some of the challenges is people think about what they've achieved, whether it's all they hoped for, when they'll get some me time. And hint, this is a big upheaval time. Lots of people find marriage breakdowns in those years because when do I get some me time? Anyway, won't go into that. And pretty soon ageism kicks in when people are applying for roles. Again, the incorrect assumptions about what mature people have to offer and their ability to learn, their mastery of technology, and those sorts of things can work against them. Sometimes we find ourselves in a career plateau. So we've gone so far, and then kind of that plateau when a person reaches the top of their game and feels like there's nothing left to learn, or when there's a lack of opportunities to take on additional responsibilities, or if employers overlook them for advancement. For some people, this is fine. I can coast. I'm quite happy. I've got all these outside interests. I'm quite happy to go to work, do a good job, but I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need extra challenges. There's plenty for me, and I've got a life outside of work. But for other people, it can be frustrating, and the lack of opportunities is really stymieing, and they lose enthusiasm for the job. And with the former case, when I'm quite happy to just go along, that can be dangerous too, because it doesn't matter how good you are at your job, things change, and if you're not capable of changing with them, then you may be in trouble. However, quite often, this is a time for people to reevaluate their career path, and often this coincides with that re-examination of life and taking a fresh look at goals, values, needs, interests, and preferences. And I call this often time for a career renaissance. You've perhaps got a financial stability in life that you didn't have when you were young. Your life, perhaps you've got grown and gone kids that are looking after themselves. You can afford to do what you want to do now. So you help them consider choices and change. And this can lead to a whole new blossoming of people's talents in that career renaissance. Past 60, some employees have concerns about being passed over for new challenges. On the other hand, they might look forward to that whole new chapter when they can do what they really want. Their maturity and experience may be undervalued. And some people at this time are worrying about retirement. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have been able to put aside financially, superannuation, those sorts of things. Many women will move into poverty when they stop working. Many men too, but it particularly affects women and people in rental properties. It can be a really troublesome horizon that they are looking forward to. Others are keen to keep working, not just from a financial point of view, but because they love it and they're energetic, they're capable, they expect to work right through to their 80s. So, and indeed, with lifespans getting longer, many of us will live to have an on-call career. So you finish your actual career, and then you can spend time doing something completely different that may indeed lead to an on-call career. So again, as a mentor, you're helping people explore their options. So while the challenges people face are different at different ages and stages, your role as a mentor is basically the same. You'll help them take stock of where they are now, explore options, make informed choices about where they want to be, and formulate plans about how they might get there, and take actions with your support and encouragement. So there we are, just a minute or so over time. I've now covered the content. We've talked about career. Well, we've talked about the contents, the bigger picture of the mentor's role, the changes that we're seeing, and the career phases, the sort of challenges people have. I hope you've got some good takeaways from this, and I'd love to know what they are if you care to share them in the chat box. And if you've come up with some actions for yourself, if you've got a bit of a to-do list, also type those in. I'll stick around as long as there are people here who want to keep chatting. In the meantime, here's the calendar for the rest of the year. Now I'll go back as soon as I get off here, and I'll take the 100 limit off participants so that you won't be prevented from registering for those webinars. If you're here today live, you will receive an invitation to, I put you on my mailing list. You will receive an invitation each month with the link to that webinar. If you're not on my mailing list, look over to the side and you'll see a place where you can sign up if you're watching the recording of this. All of the material from today's webinar and the other webinars this year is drawn from the book, The Mentors Toolkit for Career Conversation. So everything I talk about here, all the tables, all the tools, all the activities are actually available to you in that book. There's more than 50 reproducible activities. lots of examples of questions, thought starters, discussion topics, and access to the online video course, which you can allow your mentees to actually look at. So, and I'll send you some information about where you can get the book in an email later today. So I'm interested in your key takeaways, your actions, and your questions. So if you want to stick around and have a conversation, and I can open up the microphones if you want to chat as well as the numbers reduce. Okay, just looking. Okay, thanks, Malcolm. Lovely to see you here again this year. Thanks, Claudia. Thanks, Suzanne. Al has shared something with us that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go download that and have a look. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks, Al. Oh, so I'm young old at the moment. How about that? Cool. All right. Okay. Okay, the recording will be available to you. Let me just stop the recording as a matter of fact now.